It's time for the Bison Beat with KSJB Sports Director Kyle Dean and voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane. Brought to you by First Class Aviation Maintenance and Flight School and FTC of Lisbon, North Dakota. Now, here's Kyle Dean and Jeff Culhane.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon. You're listening to the Bison Beat here on AM 600 KSJB, online at ksjbam.com. And joining me every week, every Wednesday, it's the one and only voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm going to be back on with you. How are you?
I am doing very well. It feels like fall out there, and it's, like I said every week, it's perfect football weather, right?
Yeah, it's good to feel like playoff weather outside with the high school season coming closer to a close. So, yeah, it feels like playoff football right now.
That's for sure, but we're still a while from playoff football for the Bison. But before we start talking about what's coming up here for the NDSU Bison, we have to recap last week's game versus South Dakota State, which was a kind of a heartbreaker on that last play, wasn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, it definitely was. You know, South Dakota State came in and they took a heavyweight punch at the Bison, just like everyone else has so far this season. And for the first time, they connected. You know, the touchdown pass at the end of the game from 2 yards out, 1 second remaining, definitely stings. Anytime you lose, it hurts. And, you know, that game is a rivalry game of sorts with the Dakota marker. And the Bison had dominated the series over the last 8 games. And give South Dakota State credit. They played really well in that game Saturday. That's by far the best game they played all season. And John Stiegelmeier made it very clear that he wanted to win that football game in a big-time way, and they sold out. They didn't punt the football once. They went for it on fourth down every single time, and they got it done. They got the win.
And, you know, I was listening to you guys on the way home after our high school football game that we had on Saturday afternoon, and I would have to say that coach, he was gutsy, and he needed to do what he had to do, I guess, to play in Fargo, huh?
Well, I know John Stiegelmeier a little bit. I think he was just tired of losing to North Dakota State.
Mm-hmm.
Only one time since 1962 has South Dakota State won in Fargo, and that was 2008.
Wow.
So John Stiegelmeier in his 20-year career had only won once at NDSU in Fargo. So he was hungry. He wanted it, and they were aggressive. It almost worked against them because in a tight ball game, they had probably, I would say at minimum, they left 9 points out there on the field because NDSU turned them back 3 different times when they could have kicked the field goal. But again, offensively, the Bison just could not convert on third down in the fourth quarter, could not move the chains and extend their drives in the second half, and ultimately that allowed South Dakota State the opportunities that they had at the end of the game.
So what did Coach Kleiman say after the post-game and also on the Monday show that you guys do? What did he exactly say? Because, you know, they have to put this behind them to get ready for this Saturday. What are they doing then for this week?
Oh, I think it's business as usual. I mean, this is a team that doesn't hit the panic button.
Mm-hmm.
I think they respect what South Dakota State did coming in here and winning the game and beating them last Saturday. But, you know, it's hard to go undefeated in football. I mean, during this great run by North Dakota State, the Bison have only been undefeated one time, and that was 2013. So it's a very tough thing to do. It's hard to win football games. And look, you know, it was basically this same time a year ago. Carson Wentz is injured. The Bison lose to South Dakota with a field goal at the end of the game inside the Fargo Dome. And they're 4-2 heading on a 2-game road swing. Well, the Bison lose a game at the end of the game to South Dakota State.
Mm-hmm.
They're now 5-1 and staring a 2-game road swing dead in the face as well. So this team's been here before, and being around the players earlier this week, they are razor focused right now to get back on the winning track. So they're going to go to Macomb. They're going to go in there with some intensity and look to play their first full 4-quarter game of their best brand of football this season.
And now looking at the scoreboard from last week, NDSU wasn't the only undefeated team that lost. The entire rankings took a shook up for this weekend. What can we see from last week's FCS scoreboard?
Well, big game in down south in the Southern Conference is Chattanooga went to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and the Citadel got a win. I believe the number was 81 plays, and they ran the football 77 times.
Wow.
In that game. So the Citadel right now, they are undefeated. Also, Sam Houston State, I believe, is the only other undefeated team in the FCS right now, and they're number one in the country after NDSU's loss. But Sam Houston State really hasn't played anybody. If you look at their schedule, they have a win over a Division II school, and the combined record of their opponents so far is it's not. I mean, I think it's 9-23.
Okay,
is a combined record of their foes, so it's not very good. The Bison are fine. North Dakota State. That win did more for South Dakota State than a loss does to NDSU. If you're looking at brackets and bracketology for the FCS playoffs, I think the Bison are still the number one overall seed in the bracket. But now they just have to regroup, get together, and play good football in their final 5 games of the regular season. They need to run the table here if they want to remain in the top 2 and have the road to Frisco go through Fargo once again.
And like you were saying, the strength of schedule and looking at the Bison strength of schedule, ranked team after ranked team after ranked team. And that's what happens when you rank number one. Everybody's gunning for you, right?
Oh, exactly. And when you win 5 straight national championships, people want to see you lose. And that's the name of the game. Everybody wants to see North Dakota State lose outside of Bison Nation. They're tired of the run. They want somebody new to win. Everybody in the Valley is gunning for NDSU, and it just gets tougher every year. It's tougher game in and game out because teams are going to do different things to beat North Dakota State. They're not going to play their typical weekly game plan. They're going to throw wrinkles at the Bison because they want to win that game. They want to beat NDSU. South Dakota State didn't go for it once on 4th down this season. They went for it 6 times on 4th down versus North Dakota State, and they incorporated the quarterback run game, designed quarterback run game with Aaron Christian that they had the capability of doing with Christian, but they didn't do once yet to start the year. So teams are going to throw wrinkles out there because rarely can you line up and go toe-to-toe with the Bison. You've got to catch them off guard a little bit, and that's what South Dakota State did to some degree last weekend.
All right, Jeff, we are going to take a quick break here, and we will continue with the Bison Beat right after this here on AM 600 KSJB.
Did you ever look to the skies and dream of flying an airplane? Quit dreaming and contact First Class Aviation to schedule your discovery flight, where a first-class instructor will take you up in one of their airplanes. Call 952-1515, 952-1515. Aircraft maintenance is also available. Just call to schedule your aircraft. And they offer aircraft rental, too. Owners are NDSU Bison team makers at First Class Aviation, Flight School, and Aircraft Maintenance at Jamestown Airport. Go Bison!
Don't give up on your soybeans too early. Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with Hefty Seed Company. Far too often we see yield left on the table because either the growing season just wore people down or they simply were tired of spending more money. If a $5 investment turned into $10 to $40 in a month, would you do it? To find these opportunities, keep scouting your fields all the way until the soybeans start to turn yellow. There's a potential for a very nice crop. Don't leave yield on the table by giving up on your soybeans too early. Call 1-800-27-HEFTY for the answers to your agronomic questions.
Quarterback run play right side. Here's Stick. Up the middle. 15, 10, 5. In there. Touchdown.
Following the Dakota Marker game, the Bison back on the road in Missouri Valley Football Conference play. Hi, this is Jeff Culhane. Join me and our entire network broadcast team Saturday from Hanson Field in Macomb, Illinois. The Bison take on Western Illinois. The Leathernecks come in at 5-1. Pre-game coverage begins at 5:30 on the Peterson Farm Seed Bison Radio Network.
NDSU Bison football right here on AM 600 KSJB and online at ksjbam.com. Welcome back to the Bison Beat here on AM 600 KSJB and online at ksjbam.com. Joining us through the power of telephone, the one and only voice of the Bison, Jeff Culhane. Once again, Jeff, welcome back, and thank you for joining us here on our Wednesdays.
Kyle, always great to chat with you. It's amazing to think that we're over halfway through the football season, isn't it?
I know, right? And I was looking at the schedule because I do the high school games, and I look at the Bison schedule. And I'm like, wow, it's all wrapping up in the fall already. And before you know it, we're going to be at that Christmas time.
Well, basketball's 2 weeks from today for
Wow.
North Dakota State men's basketball as they open up their brand new venue, the Shield Center inside the Stanford Health Athletic Complex. And I know football is a big deal around here, and rightly so, but David Richmond's basketball team has got a new venue, a new arena, and they've got a really good team this year that I'm looking forward to being a part of and watching play.
And that should be just as exciting as some NDSU Bison football. And speaking of Bison football, we have number 12 Western Illinois coming up. They have a 5-1 overall record, 2-1 in the conference. And this game, very, very important, isn't it?
Huge game, Kyle. Every game from here on out with the loss is categorized as must-win in my mind, just from the perspective of, as we talked about earlier, you have to, I think, win out if you're North Dakota State. If the Bison are 10-1 and 7-1 in the Valley, they're probably the number 1 overall seed and definitely number 2. So you want to have, just like the Bison have done, they caught a break a year ago when Illinois State got knocked off by Richmond in the quarterfinals. You want to have everybody come to Fargo and play NDSU on the road to Frisco. The Bison have not had to play a road game during this run, and that's the key here. You want to have everyone coming to Fargo, deal with the noise, deal with the intensity and all of those things, because the Bison in the postseason at home are almost unbeatable.
And, I was looking at this information about this upcoming game, and last year's game was a huge blowout looking at the score from last year. I think it was 59-7 in Fargo, and keep in mind that was in Fargo. So is this a totally different team than from last year?
Well, you got a new coaching staff. Charlie Fisher is the new head coach of the Leathernecks of Western Illinois. He was the offensive coordinator for Richmond last season. So he was in the Fargo Dome last year, but with the Spiders in the semifinal loss to NDSU, where the Bison really ran Richmond off the field. He's a journeyman through college football. He's been an assistant coach at North Carolina State. He's coached Jay Cutler at Vanderbilt, Christian Hackenberg at Penn State, Matt McGloin at Penn State. So he knows offense. He knows quarterbacks. He's got a pretty good young quarterback himself in sophomore Sean McGuire. They've got an excellent running back in Steve McShane, and they have a very good wide receiver in Lance Lenore, a senior wide receiver who is 9 catches away from the all-time receptions mark in Missouri Valley Football Conference history. So we're going to change their offense up a little bit. The atmosphere in Macomb, a little bit sleepier than you're used to, I think. You're not sure what kind of crowd you're going to get. The Bison have to bring their own energy somewhat in this game, because the crowd is not certainly going to be anything near what we see at the Fargo Dome on a weekly basis. So new coaching staff, new head coach, confident team. They've won a lot of games late and just found ways to win at 5-1 right now. They're not a dominant team, but they know how to win.
So what does Coach Kleiman think is the biggest challenge for this upcoming game, even though they're on the road? What does he think is the biggest challenge?
Well, I think he sees their offense. They're a balanced offensive attack. They're a pro-style offense that can hurt you in many ways.
Okay.
They're scoring at 31 points per game right now, so they can score the football. So I think from that respect, he looks at that, and he looks at that balance, and that is certainly a concern. I think NDSU likes the matchup they have versus the Western Illinois defense. They're the worst passing defense in the league. They are the 6th worst rushing defense in the league and 9th overall in total defense. So I think the Bison feel like they can run the football. I think they feel like they can be physical, get back to owning the time of possession, which they lost last weekend versus South Dakota State. And Western, they've got an FBS win themselves. They beat Northern Illinois on the road in DeKalb back in September. So the Leathernecks have been battle-tested. They've been in close games. If the Bison can jump out early, Western has not had to come from behind very much this year. That could be a key to this football game.
All right. Well, since we're going to wrap up the Bison Beat here, what time is the pregame show and what time is kickoff for this Saturday?
Yeah, we got a night game, Kyle. Pregame starts at 5:30 right here on KSJB, and kickoff set for just after 6 p.m. from Hanson Field in Macomb, Illinois. Should be a huge one for the Bison and in the Missouri Valley Football Conference race.
Awesome. And before we go, one last question. Vikings are playing Philadelphia. Who are you going to take in that game?
I'm sorry, everybody. Go Vikings. I want Carson to play well, but you got a guy that's been rooting for the Vikings since he was in diapers.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Bears fan, so you know what? I'm going to go with Carson Wentz on this one in the Eagles.
I'm sorry to hear that, Kyle.
I am too sometimes. Hey, thank you very much, Jeff. We'll talk to you next Wednesday, all right?
Thanks, Kyle.
See you later. That's once again Jeff Culhane, voice of the Bison, here on the Bison Beats, Wednesday afternoons, 2:30 p.m., KSJB.